First, let's say that dyspraxia is not in and of itself a subtype of learning disabilities, but many children with learning disabilities have dyspraxia or features of dyspraxia. What does dyspraxia mean? Dyspraxia is a motor skill difficulty. It's a motor skill disorder. And it's a very complex disorder. It isn't just one thing. Some children with dyspraxia have difficulties with handwriting. That's one of the things that we see most in children when they experience dyspraxic kinds of problems. We also see it in fine motor things like dressing and buttoning and snapping and zippering and using utensils, doing fine motor kinds of things. When we think about dyspraxic children, however, very often what we think of is kids who are bumping into things. They're clumsy. They have difficulty with balance. Children with dyspraxia very often have problems learning to ride a bicycle, or watch them in the playground trying to catch and throw and use a hula hoop and bounce a ball. These are things that are really difficult for children with dyspraxia. Watching them dance or teaching them rhythmic steps, also something that's very difficult for children with dyspraxia. These are kids who, when they're walking to their desk, because they don't negotiate space really well, they often have difficulties telling where things begin and end. They bump into things, so they're knocking things over, they're dropping things and bumping into other people's desks. And they'll also sometimes have difficulties with negotiating strength, so they may grab something really tight, or they may hold something a little bit too loose. These are some of the early signs and some of the ongoing signs of dyspraxia in school-age children. What's interesting also is dyspraxic kids, or kids with dyspraxia, also have difficulties with speech. Very often they have difficulties articulating the sounds of words. They don't move their tongues and they don't shape their mouths properly to form sounds. So they have some articulation disorders. They may also have difficulty modulating the volume of their speech. They may be a little too loud, they may be a little too soft, they may have difficulties adjusting their volume of speech in different settings. And they also may speak much too quickly or a little bit too slowly, or they may mix and match, and it may be difficult just in terms of how it is that their speech is perceived and how it's heard by other people. Part of dyspraxia is also that children will have difficulty with memory and focus. So a fair number of children with dyspraxia also look like have attentional issues, and some in fact do. And it looks like they have some memory issues, and they may have difficulties with memory skills more so than the non-disabled population. What's very typical of children with dyspraxia is that they have difficulty planning their motor skill activities, and they often have difficulty completing a task because they get lost in the process. It's so difficult for them to do some of the things that need to get done, they often don't complete the tasks that are demanded of them. So, what do you do? What are the kinds of treatments? Well, dyspraxia is not something that goes away, but the signs and symptoms of dyspraxia will sometimes lessen over time, and some of those signs actually dissipate as the person gets older and they develop strategies but also body strength. They have practice doing some of the things that were difficult early on in their lives. Very important for young children who show signs of dyspraxia is to be involved in speech-language therapy, to work on some of those articulation and volume and rate of speech issues. Occupational therapy is also very helpful, again, especially with young children and children in the early to middle grades. And physical therapy is also helpful for some children to help negotiate some of those balance and coordination issues that they'll demonstrate. Some of these things last a long time. Some of these things will go away with practice, but very much like is the case with some learning disabilities, the signs and symptoms of dyspraxia will not just by themselves go away.